Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts by showing us a city on fire and a man explaining that one day the world suddenly came to an end. There was a pandemic that hit. Sounds quite familiar. With it came war, as well as an economic decline, a shortage of food, and tons of other typical end of the world stuff. The one that hammered the final nail into humanity's coffin was not themselves, rather, it was the one who brought upon the end of humanity, which were characters straight out of video games. He's talking about monsters. What happened afterwards was pretty predictable, and just like how it goes in novels, metahumans who possess special abilities appeared. However, there was something different between the novels and reality. The metahumans were way too damn weak to even fight back against the monsters. It jumps to 3 days later in our story as a man is digging into his bag of chips, saying yes, the world has not completely ended because he is still living just like a normal dude. Being a chill guy. The man starts chugging his drink and then finishes it and says that the only difference is that now he is all alone. He is the only one living in this apartment of 100 square meters, and his eyes look depressed. He says that his mom, dad, and grandpa are all outside, and his father ultimately decided to buy this place, and it was bought by borrowing a total of 200 million won from the bank and all of his family's assets, which total to another 200 mil. The reason he is staying here despite not being born wealthy is because someone needs to live here for 2 years before they can enjoy the tax benefits from buying it. That's why he's been living in such a place and has been locked in here after the sudden apocalypse. We see him frantically going through his phone as he's making a very nervous expression since he is still getting no service on his phone. He sighs, and then we hear a giant animal screeching. He looks up confused, only to see it flying directly at him. As it gets closer, we see some straight nightmare fuel as it causes him to fall to the ground because he got jump scared. As the creature starts to get closer to the window, the man starts screaming as loud as he can, and then we hear it thud against some kind of wall, and the man slowly opens his eyes, wondering what's going on as he sees a giant blue screen that says a subject who has not been permitted entry is trying to enter. We see he has an ability called the Ultimate Shut-in-House Declaration, which is a passive skill, which means that nobody can enter the house without his permission. He sighs out of relief and then stands up, saying that's right, the reason he survived up until now is solely due to this ability. Makes sense now why only his apartment was still standing. We see him trying to forcefully open the door, but it does not work. He even gets so pissed that he raises his leg and tries to kick the door. Then he walks back to his kitchen, saying that after the world had faced its end, yet he was forced to sit here and watch, as even though the ability is protecting him, it is also keeping him completely trapped inside the house. Later in the night, we see him sitting in a corner looking at a status window, and he says he never wanted to be a shut-in, and it's low-key frustrating the hell out of him because he can't do anything about it. There's another problem. As he looks to his left, he says that food is going to be a big factor from here on out because his fridge's electricity has been cut off since yesterday. He was surviving with side dishes from his fridge, but this won't last for long. He says he only has a few packets of ramen left, and he anxiously bites his nails. Sometime later he notices the window popping up on its own as it tells him that he has hunted a calican and obtained a great amount of experience, and due to this, his skill level has increased. His eyes open wide, and he's surprised, as when he heads out to his balcony, he looks down to see that monster from yesterday on the floor being scavenged by a group of goblins. He wonders if it counted as him hunting it because it crashed into his house, and he then obtains a new skill. But before we can see it, it says the nearby loot has met the requirements, and it begins to calculate it. The goblin starts to screech, and he's confused, wondering what the hell has them acting so happy. Then they immediately start to crash out because the monster's corpse dissipates into thin air, and now that the loot calculation is complete, we see that he has earned 2.2 million won, and it has been deposited straight into his wallet. He wonders what this is about, and then the electricity suddenly cuts back on, and he turns, wondering if this is real since it's all happening by itself. We see his new skill is called Dignity Preservation, and in order to preserve his dignity, half of his house's functions will be restored. And now he even has his wallet in his status menu. His eyes look like they're full of disbelief, and then he immediately starts getting hella hyped since he has his fridge again. He goes to check on it by opening it, and the light cuts on. He immediately turns on the faucet and even the stove, and he says that it's crazy that it's working like it used to, and he's so damn happy for the first time since the apocalypse started. He wonders if maybe his phone is also working, so he pulls it out of his pocket and looks at it, but of course, he has no service. He sighs but decides that it's not that big of a deal. Then he thinks about something as he sees a USB on the floor. He immediately gets up and heads over to his computer, plugging it in. He starts to go through memory lane as he sees his mother holding him as a child, and then she took him to his first day of school, and he even went on a trip with his parents. They celebrated his birthday and so on. Just normal family shit. He's looking at the monitor while gritting his teeth and then resolves himself, saying that he needs to bring his family here no matter what. He starts to sit up and then heads back to the balcony, saying that that is the only way they can all survive, together. He then hears the system window and looks over to see that now he can buy items listed in stores at the original prices. He's confused, but when he opens his status window and looks at the wallet, he sees there is a new function called List Item, and it asks if he would like to look at it. The man starts to wonder what could possibly be in it. He says that looking at how it tells him how much money he has, it seems that it's connected to his wallet. He opens the door to his balcony, and on the railing, we see a blue barrier stopping him from leaving the house. He says it's as he thought, it did not work, and he lets it out a sigh, saying even with his skill level going up, he still can't leave. But one thing is certain for sure, if he hunts monsters, his level will increase, and he'll get a new skill. If he levels up, then he might be able to obtain a skill that allows him to leave. But he wonders how he's meant to kill monsters in this state, as it's hard to expect a situation like before to happen again. Then he looks down at the goblins harvesting the corpse of the Calican, and he says that he might be able to kill the goblins. He runs into his kitchen, grabbing a water bottle, and then readies himself, throwing it as hard as he can as we see it soar out of the window. He looks excited, saying he's glad this works, as it means he can throw items outside the house. He then kneels down and picks up a dumbbell, saying in that case he'll try this. He hears the goblins screeching, and he turns, wondering what they are doing. As we see them starting to dismember the monster's corpse and take it away, he watches as they start to leave and starts to panic, saying that they can't do that. He then readies himself, taking a deep breath, and then yeets the dumbbell as far as he can, begging it not to miss. It then thuds right into the monster's corpse behind the goblins, low-key scaring them a bit. The man starts to sweat nervously, saying that he's definitely screwed, as all he has left is one more. He wonders what to do, saying he doesn't have anything else in the house that he can kill them with, and he's not strong enough to throw TVs or computers. The goblins then continue screeching, and he notices that they're actually all looking up at him, and one of them is even holding onto the dumbbell while pointing at him. Fear starts to settle in as he realizes that he's been caught. The goblins all start running towards his house. He then says that now that he thinks about it, this is actually not so bad since they are actually a good distance away. Something then clicks, and he opens the store menu once more, and where it says list item, he actually clicks it this time and asks if he would like to list the item he's holding. He says yes, and the dumbbell gets sucked into it. We see that it is now added to his store and that it costs 17,001. He says it's the same price as when he bought it online, and he thinks that the market rate here must be the same as before the world ended. He purchases 2 of the dumbbells, or maybe it's a set, I'm not sure. But he's excited, as the blue light starts to emit from the status window. As we see it printing the item, or maybe even teleporting in front of him, he gets hella excited as we hear him yapping all the way upstairs. Then immediately, a dumbbell is thrown out of his balcony, and this time it crashes into a goblin skull, killing him on the spot. Since he has hunted at level 7, he has obtained experience in 3001. The man gets excited, but the goblins don't feel the same way, as they are looking at their fallen comrade's corpse, and they start to look up at him while screaming. But while they were distracted, he threw another dumbbell, but this time they managed to avoid it. The man is annoyed that he missed, and he buys 3 more sets of the dumbbells. As they start to spawn in, he picks one up and immediately yeets it, hitting another goblin directly in the head, killing it, giving him another 2,501, and since his skill level has increased, he has obtained a new skill. Now he's starting to feel the RPG vibes, and we see that he has an alternate dimension now for storing items. He says open storage, as we see a window appearing in front of his hand. It asks if he would like to store his dumbbell, and he says yes, and it starts to warp back into it. Inside of the storage, it tells him exactly what he has, asking if he would like to summon it, and his eyes start to sparkle up as he says yes, and it spawns it directly in his hand. He says that this means he can summon items to any place he wants. In that case, there's only one thing left, as it's time to buy in bulk and start farming some experience, as we see his status screen getting spammed. Sometime later, he then opens the storage right out of the window and starts to focus himself while summoning all of the dumbbells he has in his storage, making it rain from the sky as if he was dropping artillery on these things. The way he used the summon ability is low-key sick. The goblins can't do anything but look up in horror as he starts to rack in all of the experience points and even 55,001. and it asks if he would like to list additional items. He starts to think about all the possibilities and gets excited. He says that he listed 10 more items after the shop opened, and we see that along with a dumbbell, there's also ramen, rice, and a bunch of other food-related items. He says that he ended up using it to clean up his house while stocking it full of daily necessities and groceries. He then realizes something as he sees that his money count has actually gone down from where it was a second ago. He wonders if it costs money to keep the dignity preservation on, and he turns to look at the refrigerator, saying that he must actually have to pay the bills, such as electric, gas, and water, and this is actually quite troublesome. He starts to mutter to himself, saying it's all because of those damn goblins. After he swarmed them with the way to get in, they ran away and abandoned their old home. Since then, he's only managed to kill 2 of them. He wonders if there are any other creatures that he could hunt out there. He looks down at the Calican's corpse, saying it doesn't look like there's a single mob monster outside, and he has to find another method. He then wonders if maybe he'll be lucky enough to have another dumb bird fly in. And as soon as he says that, he looks up in the sky as we see another Calican flying closer and closer to him, and he wonders if maybe he can predict the future. He starts to run away from the window, saying that this means that he has not been abandoned. We see him tying something to a chair, and he immediately starts to stick it outside of the window. As the bird is beginning to fly by him, we see that it's actually a mirror reflecting light. As it begins to shine, it catches the bird's attention, and the bird starts to fly directly towards him because birds like shiny things. Immediately, when it goes to bite at him, the man laughs, saying that he's glad it worked as it only hits the wall, just like the very first one did. He says at this rate, it's a done deal, and he'll definitely level up if he kills it. But unlike before, the Calican doesn't just die from impact, and immediately the man feels a very strong gust of wind, forcing him to close his eyes, and when he slowly starts to open them, the Calican is nowhere to be seen. He then hears it above him and looks up in horror as it is now perched right above his window. His heart starts to drop. We see the Calican raising its beak up into the sky, immediately slamming it down, trying to peck its way into the building, but the barrier stops it, and he starts to get spammed with the notification saying that an unauthorized entity is attempting to enter. He wonders if maybe it's going to actually break through and immediately opens the store, saying that there has to be something he can do here. He looks at all the items that he has listed, and he says that from what he's observed so far, the calculation only happens if the corpse is nearby, and his goblin hunts haven't always been successful. Some survivors took the corpses of the dead allies away, and those corpses weren't calculated as loot. In other words, if the distance exceeds a certain limit, the calculation did not occur, and he can't let that happen at all with a Calican. He wonders if maybe there's a way to kill it in one shot. He then recalls that he has canola oil, and something catches his attention, and he has an idea. He purchases 10 bottles immediately. Straight Diddy vibes, as he invites the bird to a freak off. As they all spawn in on the floor directly below him, he grabs them all up and runs to the kitchen, grabbing a pot. He cuts on the stove and starts to dump in all the oil straight into it while turning the temperature up. We see him tie a towel around a broomstick and then immediately dip it into the oil. He then props it up and opens his store while grabbing onto the pot of boiling oil, and it asks if he'd like to list the item. He says yes and then begins to dump it into it, and now boiling oil has been added. He grabs a lighter off the counter and begins to light up his makeshift torch, and as it starts to burn, this main character is actually cooking. The bird is still outside the window, trying to peck its way in, and he opens the window to head outside. Now with a torch in hand, he walks up underneath it and he yells to summon the boiling oil as it starts to spawn and right above the bird, burning the absolute piss out of its head. While it's flailing around from the pain, the main character takes the chance by raising his torch into the air and yeeting it directly towards the bird, striking the oil, lighting the entire thing on fire. As the Calican starts to burst into flames, the man smiles, saying that it worked. The Calican begins to lose the ability to fly and descends straight into the parking lot below the apartment, crashing. The sound physically makes him cringe, and the Calican starts to make a blood-curdling screech as it slowly burns to death. Finally, with its last breath, we watch as the life leaves its eyes, and a window appears saying that he has defeated a level 27 Calican, and he has obtained a fat amount of experience, causing him to level twice and even obtain a new skill. Since the body is close enough for the loot calculation, it begins to do just that, and sometime later it finishes. As the fire continues burning, we see that he has earned almost 10 million won. He says that is hella absurd that he got so much from that. The status window says that the requirements have been met, and the house territory expansion has begun. The entire apartment begins to shake violently, causing him to stumble a bit, and he wonders what the hell is going on. Everything then slowly begins to fade out, surprising him as it feels as if time has stopped for a second. He starts to get a very intense pain in his chest as we see him hitting the domain expansion. It even passes down through the hallway and to the apartment next door, where a family was sitting down at their table. The man is just surprised that there are people and that his neighbors are still alive in this situation. The man wonders just what the hell is happening. The black then starts to fade out from his eyes as an aura dissipates around him. He says, just a moment ago, he started to get a whole lot of information about the family. We learn that the father's name is Choi Hyung-jun. He is in his late 30s. The wife is named Park Hee-hwan. She is in her late 30s. They have 2 kids named Choi Na-yeon, who is 6, and Sol-yoon, who is 3. Since he has discovered beings that meet the requirement of being taken into citizens, it asks if he would like to give them citizenship. He immediately runs to the door but stops, wondering what would happen if he doesn't give them citizenship. The status window tells him that beings that are not allowed to live here will be expelled out of the house. It then asks if he is certain that he does not want to grant them citizenship. He says if he doesn't do it, then all of them will be exposed to the threats of the monsters. He then decides to give the 4 of them citizenship. He says this is great as he might have gotten other skills related to citizenship unlocked as well, so he should check it out. We see he has an ability called Ultimate Eyes, which means nothing in the house can escape his sight. He wonders if there is literally anything in here related to citizens. But then, after some digging, he sees citizenship management and decides to open it. We can see their levels and his trust with them, and the population is 4 out of 600. He is surprised that there can be this many, saying that sounds like too much. He says the father's name, opening his status window, and he has the option to give him a quest, as well as adjusting the experience distribution rate and money distribution rate. He says that he thinks it's talking about the money that they'll share with him from killing mobs, and he can decide the split. And he starts to laugh, saying this must be how he's supposed to get stronger. He decides to give Hyung-jun a quest. We see there's quest description, time limit, reward, and penalty for failure, which are all blank. And he's surprised, which means that he can fill in on the details. The quest description is to hunt a goblin. He has 168 hours. He'll earn a small amount of experience, but there is no penalty for failure. And it confirms if he would like to give the quest. He says that even though the reward is basic, he wonders how far he can go with the penalty, and he edits the penalty to cause death. And when it asks if he'd like to give it, he says no. And he cancels the request and sits down, saying if he wants, he could kill his citizens anytime. And even though this it is his ability, he's not really sure what to do. He decides to activate the Ultimate Eyes, and the whole domain expansion thing we saw before immediately sinks in, and he can see everything in their house. Hee-hwan asks him what they should do now. And Hyung-jun asks her what else, saying that he needs to get out and at least get water. He wants her to stay in here with the kids and wait. She barks at him, saying that's too dangerous. He says that he knows, but there's no other choice. And she asks him if any place would even have water. He says that he wants to try going to the convenience store nearby. It's a pretty big store, so there should be something there. Sol-yoon then tells her mother that she's thirsty. The guilt starts to weigh in on Hyung-jun. He asks his wife if she'll trust him, saying he'll definitely bring something back, so she should wait for him. She looks reluctant, but understands what he must do. And then the main character dispels the Ultimate Eyes. He says the situation is way worse than he thought, and he decides to open the store. Under item list, he said it would be good if there was more capacity, and opens his skill window to look at everything that he has at the moment. He sees that he has 3 points under each and every one of the abilities, and he gets excited. As it asks him if he would like to increase the level of his store skill, he says yes, and his status window begins to glow blue as it upgrades. It says now that it's level 2, the number of items that can be listed has been increased to 20, and there has been a 10% discount applied to all of the items. The man says that's great, and he has 2 remaining points, and he should just invest more in store and dignity preservation. He might even want to get more citizens. Now that the store is level 3, he can list 40 items, and he has the function to restore items. He says that this must mean that it can turn items that are old into newer items. He says that's gas, and it was definitely worth increasing his store's level to 3 then. He opens the store, and he starts to buy some water and tangerines. After he buys them, he decides to increase the level of his dignity preservation skill as well, saying if he provides electricity and water to the neighbor, he requests a lot of things in return. Now his skill is level 2, which means he can register vassals. He wonders what that means, but then it jumps back to Hyung-jun getting ready to head outside. His entire family looks very worried, and he says that he'll be back and that they should protect the house while he's gone. Na Yun asks if he's really going out. He says yes, he needs to go out and get them food and water, and that she should listen to her mother while he's gone, and he pats her head. She starts to scream and cry, warning him that there are monsters outside. Then we get a flashback to her and her sister playing in the sand, and immediately goblins swarmed out of nowhere. And when they heard people screaming, they looked over to see them and started to run away. Immediately, Hyung Jun and Hee Hwan run in, picking both of them up while running away from the goblins that were chasing them. Hyung Jun hates thinking about it because if he was even just a few moments late, they'd both be dead. As his daughters start to both cry, Hee Hwan tries to comfort them, telling them that it's fine. And then Hyung Jun's stomach starts to feel like it's in knots, as this could be his last time seeing them. He bites his lip out of frustration, and then immediately they hear a knock on the door. They all look at it in absolute horror as the knock continues. It's silent for a second, and then we hear the main character saying, "Excuse me, please open the door." Hyung Jun looks too confused to even think about it, saying there's no guarantee that is a person as it could also be a monster, and it's way too dangerous to risk it. He grips tighter onto his golf club, and as the knocking continues, they all start to get a chill down their spine. Immediately the knocking stops, and they start to feel a little relieved. Then they hear the keypad for their door being pressed, and it opens as a bright light is seen outside. Hyung Jun and his family mistake this light as something else, and he starts to shield them with his body. Dad. And he yells while crying, saying, "Please don't hurt my wife and children." We then hear the main character calmly say, "Excuse me," and Hyung Jun looks over, confused, only to see him entering their house while holding a bag of groceries. Hyung Jun asks who he is, and we finally learn the main character's name is Kim Ye-hyun, and he tells them that he lives next door and he has some water and tangerines, asking if they can talk for a little after he drinks. Hyung Jun is still a little taken aback, and then starts to think about the situation. He looks at his wife and kids, realizing that he needs to get them food and water. He says there would be no reason to refuse, and he welcomes Ye-hyun into his house. Both the kids start staring at him with doubtful eyes as we see him sitting across the table from them now, and he wonders if maybe he scared them too much. He says that their blackout curtains are pretty smart since it really does reduce the chance of being attacked by monsters. He decides to get some light in here first. He looks up and starts to imagine the lights cutting on, and immediately the light cuts on above them all, and they're surprised that the lights are back on. He then hands Hyung Jun a water bottle, saying for starters, he should give the kids some water. Hyung Jun thanks him and then hands the water to both of his daughters, and they start chugging the hell out of it. Na Yun looks refreshed, but Sol Yoon is coughing pretty bad. Ye-hyun stares at her for a second and then asks her if she likes tangerines while stretching his hand out to her. She looks wary, but he drops it in her hand, and she thanks him. Hee Hwan tells her to wait as she'll peel it for her, and then we see her holding the peeled tangerine, telling her to say ah and putting it straight into her mouth. Sol Yoon immediately gets that tingling sensation when you eat something sweet and looks really happy. Hee Hwan asks if it's good, and Sol Yoon says yes, and Na Yun says that she wants one as well, and then she makes the same expression. Due to him giving them food, all of them now trust him more, and Sol Yoon's trust has reached level 50, which means loyalty has been unlocked, and we see her loyalty has surpassed 30, and she has fulfilled the requirements to be registered as a vassal. He's looking at her status window, wondering what exactly it means. Since now he can give her a quest, he says while she does fulfill all the requirements, she is too young, and he shakes his head, while explaining unlike citizens, he can only register 10 vassals, and he needs them to at least be on the level of Hyung Jun so that they can actually execute his orders. But Hyung Jun's trust in him is only at 31, unlike the kids, and he needs to gain more of his trust. Hyung Jun calls out to him, which surprises Ye-hyun, and Hyung Jun says that he doesn't know how he could repay his kindness. Ye-hyun says that in that case, they should talk in the corridor, and they both head outside towards the hallway. Now that it's just them, Ye-hyun asks if he received the citizenship notification. Hyung Jun says that his whole family actually received it around 30 minutes ago, and Ye-hyun asks if there's anything special that happened. Hyung Jun says that they couldn't move because they couldn't move their bodies for a short while. Ye-hyun wonders if that means they are frozen until they are granted citizenship. He then calls out to Hyung Jun, saying that he'll help him return to the life he had before all of this. Hyung Jun is taken aback, but Ye-hyun reassures him by saying that the monsters will not invade the house. Hyung Jun asks if that's really possible, and Ye-hyun tells him that it is. Hyung Jun realizes that it might be too good to be true and asks him what exactly he wants from him. Ye-hyun says that he might lose his life, asking if he still wants to try. Hyung-jun hesitates for a second but realizes what he must do and says that he'll definitely do it. Even without considering Ye-hyun, he was already ready to go out and get food and water, so he's already determined to put his life on the line. Ye-hyun smiles and then says that he saw the golf club just now, asking how much it cost. Hyung-jun says that it was around 400 or 500,000 won, but Ye-hyun says that's too expensive to list in the store, and he needs to save money for the future. Hyung-jun asks why he's curious about the price, and Ye-hyun quickly changes the subject, asking if he remembers the day that the monsters appeared. Hyung-jun says yes, as it was on a weekend, and it was really horrifying to see in person. Ye-hyun says that he thinks everybody who stayed home on that day survived. While a single goblin doesn't possess much strength, their levels are lower than an adult male, but the real weapon of a goblin would be that they always move in groups. But the same can also be said for humans. Ye-hyun says that he needs to grow his army. He then calls out to Hyung-jun once more, saying from now on he wants to look for survivors together with him. Sometime later in the day, we see both the lights on in the building. Ye-hyun then gets a notification saying that Hyung-jun's trust has increased. Ye-hyun says that it's gone up yet again today. Now we see all the trust levels once more, and Hyung-jun has a trust level of 40. Ye-hyun wonders if he really will be able to see his family again if he continues to recruit people. He hears the goblins screeching, and it sounds as if they're fighting something. He quickly runs over to the balcony and looks down, as he sees something unexpected. There are people fighting back against the goblins. He says that it'll be hard for him to help them. As the goblins are screeching, we see one of the men raise his hand into the air, getting ready to pitch a baseball, and then yeets it directly into a goblin's head, sending it flying and causing its head to explode. Ye-hyun is surprised by the raw power. Then a woman raises her bow, shooting 2 arrows, each one headshotting a goblin. Another man starts to walk up to them, holding a bat in his hand. He leaps up into the air, slamming down, exploding the goblin's skull, causing the rest to panic and run in fear. There are a total of 6 I counted by the bird, but might be more. The archer woman then hears something behind her and draws her bow in a panic, sweating nervously. But when she turns, there's nothing there but a bag of chips, which confuses her. She looks up to see Ye-hyun waving at her, but she can't make out what he is yelling, so she just kind of stares at him with a stank face. Ye-hyun starts flailing his arms, unsure if he's caught her attention or not. Then his doorbell rings, and he looks through the peephole to see Hyung-jun. He opens the door, telling Hyung-jun to come on in, and we see him carrying a box. But the barrier stops Hyung-jun from entering, and even Ye-hyun is confused by this as the status window appears, saying that he is unqualified and may not enter the house. Hyung-jun asks what that means, and Ye-hyun starts to think about it, saying that maybe nobody other than him can enter the house, or maybe only those registered as his vassal may enter. Ye-hyun steps up and grabs the box, which is everything that Hyung-jun thought could be used as a weapon inside of it. Ye-hyun thanks him and starts looking through it, putting all the items on the floor. He opens the store and buys 6 water bottles and 6 packets of ramen, and Hyung-jun is immediately caught off guard as they start spawning in front of him. Ye-hyun asks if he could take this down to the first floor and place it at the entrance. Hyung-jun is confused, saying that surely that would be too dangerous, but Ye-hyun tells him it's fine because, after some observation, the goblins are only active in daylight. He must bring that group who is outside to his side no matter what, and they'll have no choice but to look for him once they realize that he has food. He has a plan in mind, so hopefully Hyung-jun can follow the instructions and bring it there. Hyung-jun asks if he just needs to leave it there and come back up, and Ye-hyun tells him yes. Hyung-jun seems confident, saying that this will be easy and then bows to Ye-hyun, telling him goodbye. Ye-hyun thanks him, then says that he has to do something nice for Hyung-jun, and he opens the quest window. He gives a quest to Hyung-jun to bring 6 bottles of water and ramen to the first floor in return. He has a time limit of 24 hours, and he'll get some experience for doing it. Hyung-jun sees the quest right in front of his face, and Ye-hyun says that if he does it, he'll be able to get experience. Hyung-jun asks if it's similar to leveling up in a game, and Ye-hyun says yes. Then tells him that he is level 9 right now, and when he levels up, he'll get great rewards too, and he'll be counting on him. Hyung-jun says that he understands and quickly starts to make his way to the stairwell, looking up at it nervously before deciding to actually go down, heading from the 20th floor all the way to the first. Right outside of the apartment, he sighs, saying that now he needs to put this down. He hears talking and looks over, surprised to see a whole group of shadowy figures, but he can't really see what they are, and he starts to think maybe they're goblins. He turns, thinking that he has to run, but of course he's clumsy, so he trips, falling over, straight up eating the concrete, dropping everything onto the floor. While reeling from pain, he yells, telling his body to move as the footsteps get closer and closer. We see his eyes filled with tears, and as soon as they get right behind him, his heart starts to sink as he screams and closes his eyes in fear. Then he hears a voice calling out to him. He opens his eyes, confused that it isn't a goblin, and we see the group asking him if he's alright. It jumps back to Ye-hyun, getting a notification, saying that a subject who hasn't been permitted entry is trying to enter. Ye-hyun is confused, and wonders if maybe it's the survivors. He decides to take a look by using his ultimate eyes, and he starts to gaze through the entirety of the apartment complex. He sees the group standing right behind Hyung-jun, and they start to talk, saying that this is the apartment building that someone threw a chip bag from. One of the men asks if this means they have food, and the other one says that, now that he thinks about it, they're starting to run out of rations. He then cancels the ultimate eye, as the aura dissipates around him. He says they are indeed the people from just now. The status window then tells him that beings that meet the requirements for citizenship are approaching, asking if he would like to propose citizenship to them. Ye-hyun starts to think about it, saying in the process of expanding his territory, he will be able to forcefully grant citizenship to those who are in it. But, since outsiders are given a choice, if that's the case, they can reject his offer too. He starts to feel stressed, wondering what exactly to do in this situation. He then hears a ringing, and looks over to see a blue light on his little security system. He has an idea, and starts to smile, saying that he should take a look. He heads over to it to see Hyung-jun, asking if he is there, and Ye-hyun tells him, "One moment." Since Hyung-jun was in the middle of the quest, he has the option to edit it, and Ye-hyun says yes as he starts to change it. It asks him what he would like to change it to, and Ye-hyun smirks, saying that he needs to treat 6 guests to a meal, and now the quest has been changed. Hyung-jun asks if this is a new quest, and Ye-hyun says, exactly, and that he should tell them that he will give them food first, as he has something he is planning. Hyung-jun agrees to it, and then he heads straight back out to the group waiting at the door. He starts telling them something, but we don't get to hear it, and then he runs back to Ye-hyun, saying that they will go with it for now, and Ye-hyun thanks him. Then, he tells the system to propose citizenship to all 6 of them. We learn all of their names, but not who is who, and now they have the right to access the higher floors. They all enter the building seemingly happy, and now the number of citizens has reached 10, and the amount of experience and money that his citizens earn has increased by 10%. Ye-hyun can't believe there was such a reward for getting more citizens, saying that he can't believe there were such good buffs, that this is really going to encourage them to go out and hunt monsters, and he will gladly welcome them with open arms. Now, we see all their levels, and the highest level is 23, which means he is as strong as the Calican. We see that they have the awakened ability of baseball, which means that Ha Dongjin is the baseball dude from earlier. Ye-hyun says that in reality, depending on who throws the baseball, it's an item that could be a weapon. And if the skill multiplies the power by 3, it's great for killing monsters. As for his trust level, he can just increase it slowly. He sets the experience distribution rate to 70% for all of them, and he looks up at the window happily, saying he just needs to give them quests to hunt monsters now. And he can just sit back and relax as if he was playing an auto-hunting game. Of course, he needs to know them when the time is right, because they could be the key to him reuniting with his family. Dongjin's trust then increases, which catches Ye-hyun off guard, because it's not just his but multiple of them are now having their trust increase, and he wonders what's going on. Back at Hyung-jun's house, we see him taking them all through his house. Hee-hwan runs in, asking him what's going on, and Hyung-jun says he'll explain it later on, and he asks her to prepare some food. She asks if he means right now, saying that means she would have to prepare it from scratch, and Hyung-jun laughs, saying that he hopes she'll help him because he thinks Ye-hyun has a plan. She starts to think about it, and decides that it would be for the best, and says she'll do it right away, and she tells all of the guests to wait just a moment, and Dongjin bows while thanking her. He then looks up, curious, asking Hyung-jun what kind of person Ye-hyun is, and Hyung-jun says that he's not actually sure either. Dongjin finds that strange, and Hyung-jun says that he doesn't know anything about him other than the fact that he's his neighbor. Dongjin starts looking over to where Ye-hyun's apartment is. Hyung-jun says that he's a really interesting person though, and that this is all thanks to his help. Dongjin says this must mean he's a metahuman, and as he starts to unzip his jacket, we see he actually has the snack that Ye-hyun threw down earlier hidden inside of it, and he says that he must impress him no matter what. He's someone who is powerful enough to provide electricity, food, and water, and in the current world, it's a miraculous ability, which means he is on a whole new level. Hyung-jun says that it's going to take a while to prepare the food, asking if any of them would like to shower. The girls immediately start to think about the fact that they can take a shower, asking if this is too good to be true, and Dongjun says that he understands that if there's electricity, that means most of the facilities can be used. Before he can even finish his thought, Hyung-jun says that there is indeed warm water, and he starts to laugh. The girls look like they're about to faint from shock, and he tells them that this is a part of Ye-hyun's abilities. He has a bathroom in the living room, and a master bedroom, so two of them can wash up at the same time, and he'll show them where they are. One of the girls bows while the other is just stun-locked. Then, one of the group members asks Dongjun if he thinks that Ye-hyun is a metahuman, and he says that his abilities are probably far more powerful than his. His buddy laughs, telling him not to get discouraged, saying all they had to do was give him a good beating. Dongjun calls him a battle junkie, saying that they need to impress him if anything. Bro is an airhead on a whole new level, asking if that's really the case. Galaxy brain. The guy agrees to it, and Dongjun sighs, saying in any case, their goal is to obtain as much food as they can, so they shouldn't screw it up and make sure they read the room well. Glasses agrees, and the musclehead says he understands, while the other guy just looks really nervous about everything. Dongjun can tell how he's feeling, and grabs onto his shoulder, and we learn this one is Moon Byung-ho. Byung-ho says that he actually wasn't really paying too much attention. Dongjun apologizes, saying this is all because of him, but Byung-ho tells him that he didn't do anything wrong. But, Dongjun says that he really is sorry, because if only he didn't invite them to his housewarming. Byung-ho nervously laughs, saying it's alright, and he went because he wanted to. Dongjun says they can get food here and go back to his grandmother's place together, and Byung-ho thanks him, but still looks really sad as he says it's already way too late. As he starts to think about all the monsters that have probably already gotten to her and just every other thing that could go wrong, meaning the probability of her being alive is very low. Dongjun says that it's right nearby, so they should be able to get there if they walk together, and should just hang on for a little longer. Byung-ho tells him that he understands, but he can't help but be worried. The door immediately opens, and they all start to feel very anxious as it slowly creaks open like a horror movie. Dongjun raises the baseball, asking what's going on. Immediately, they felt it when they saw Ye-hyun with the strength to bring in all of the groceries in one trip, and he says that he'll help all of them, and they start to see a faint golden aura around him. Dongjun lowers his baseball, and they all start to think simultaneously that this dude might be the real deal, as he is their key to living a normal life in this apocalyptic world. If you've watched till the end, comment, potato, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.